Vivid verses.
The problem with being observant, Nathan had learned over the years, is that you see the ending coming long before it arrives. He'd noticed it first in college, during exam season. While his roommates crammed through the night, frantic and sweating, Nathan had always been able to read the semester's trajectory from the syllabus, the professor's emphasis during lectures, the pattern of questions on the first midterm. By finals week, he was calm, prepared, already mentally moved on to next semester. Dating, he discovered, followed similar patterns. People revealed themselves in increments, small disclosures that painted a larger picture if you paid attention. The trick was not to ignore what you saw just because you wanted a different outcome. Tonight, sitting in the private dining room of Harvest and Hearth, a farm-to-table restaurant in Portland that took reservations 3 months in advance, Nathan was paying very close attention indeed. The room was intimate, exposed brick walls, Edison bulbs hanging from reclaimed wood beams, a single long table that seated 12. Their group numbered 8. Nathan and his girlfriend Claire, his business partner Andrew and Andrew's wife Michelle, 2 colleagues from the tech startup they'd founded, and a couple Nathan had met through Claire's book club. The food was exceptional. Nathan had ordered the seared duck breast, which arrived perfectly pink, resting on a bed of roasted root vegetables and drizzled with a cherry gas streak that balanced sweet and savory in a way that made him wish he'd been hungrier. The conversation had been flowing easily, tech industry gossip, travel stories, a spirited debate about whether the new Christopher Nolan film lived up to the hype. Claire sat across from him, animated and lovely in a navy dress that brought out her eyes. She was funny tonight, charming, the version of herself that had first caught his attention at mutual friends' housewarming party 18 months ago. She had a gift for timing, for knowing exactly when to deliver a punchline. Everyone at the table was drawn to her, which was exactly what made what happened next so calculated. The conversation had turned to weekend plans. Andrew mentioned that he and Michelle were considering a hiking trip to Silver Creek State Park, a challenging trail system about 2 hours east of the city. "You two should come," Michelle said, gesturing to Nathan and Claire with her wine glass. "Make it a double date thing." "I don't know," Claire said, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "Nathan's not great with stamina. We'd probably have to turn back after 20 minutes. The table laughed. It was the kind of joke that rode the line, innocent enough on the surface, but with an unmistakable subtext. Claire let it hang there for just a beat before adding, "I'm talking about hiking, of course." "What did you think I meant?" More laughter, louder this time. Someone made a joke about Nathan needing to hit the gym. Claire grinned, pleased with herself, and took a sip of wine. Nathan smiled politely and cut another piece of duck. Inside, he was counting. 4. The first time had been at a dinner party 6 weeks ago. They'd been at the home of one of Claire's colleagues, a professor of literature who served excellent wine and mediocre lasagna. The conversation had turned to embarrassing moments, and Claire had shared a story about Nathan getting startled by a spider in their bathroom and letting out a shriek that could shatter glass. The group had laughed. Nathan had laughed too, though he'd filed the moment away. It was a minor thing, easily dismissed. Everyone told stories about their partners. The second time was 3 weeks later at a brewery with some of Nathan's friends from grad school. Claire had been talking about their recent trip to Seattle and mentioned that Nathan had gotten hilariously lost trying to navigate to their hotel despite having GPS. He spent 20 minutes insisting the app was wrong before finally admitting he'd been reading it upside down. Another laugh from the group. Another smile from Nathan, this one slightly tighter. The third time was just last weekend at a birthday brunch for Andrew. Claire had been discussing their attempt to assemble a bookshelf from a flat-pack furniture store and described Nathan as having the spatial reasoning of a concussed hamster. It had gotten a huge laugh. Andrew had nearly spit out his mimosa. And now this. A joke about sexual performance. delivered with perfect comedic timing to a table full of people Nathan worked with and respected. He watched Claire across the table, saw the flush of satisfaction on her cheeks as the conversation moved on. She was basking in the attention, the role of entertainer. And why shouldn't she? She was good at it. The table loved her. Nathan took a sip of water and made a decision. The pattern was clear now. This wasn't nervousness or social awkwardness. It wasn't Claire failing to read a room or accidentally oversharing. This was deliberate. She was using intimate details of their relationship, his moments of vulnerability, their private life together, as material for public performance. Each story positioned her as the witty observer and him as the punchline. Once could be an accident. Twice could be a habit. 3 times was a pattern. 4 times was a choice. He could feel the variables aligning in his mind, the way they did when he was debugging code or solving a complex problem at work. The question wasn't whether this behavior would continue. It would. The question was whether he was willing to accept being diminished in public for the sake of maintaining the relationship. The answer came quickly. No. The rest of dinner passed smoothly. Nathan engaged in conversation, laughed at appropriate moments, asked thoughtful questions about Andrew's hiking trip plans. He complimented the chef when their server came by to check on a meal. He was, by all external measures, having a pleasant evening. Claire didn't notice the shift. Why would she? He was giving her no signals. No cold shoulder, no pointed silence, no passive-aggressive comments. That wasn't his style. Anger was messy, unproductive. It clouded judgment and telegraphed your position before you were ready to move. Instead, Nathan simply observed. He watched Claire tell another story, this one about her eccentric aunt, harmless and genuinely funny. He noticed how she touched Michelle's arm when making a point, a gesture of intimacy and connection. He saw how she glanced at him occasionally, checking that he was paying attention, that he was appreciating her performance. She had no idea that in his mind, he'd already ended the relationship. He was just waiting for the right moment to make it official. That moment came 2 hours later, after they'd said goodnight to everyone and taken a cab back to Nathan's apartment in the Pearl District. Claire was in high spirits, chattering about how well the evening had gone, how much she liked Michelle, how the duck had been incredible. Andrew's lucky to have you as a partner, she said as Nathan unlocked his front door. You guys are building something really special with the company. Thanks, Nathan said. He held the door open for her, watched her step into his apartment like she'd done dozens of times before. She kicked off her heels and padded toward the kitchen. Want some tea? I'm gonna make some tea. Actually, I'd like to talk to you about something. Something in his tone made her pause. She turned, reading his expression. Okay, that sounds serious. It is. She came back toward him, concern flickering across her face. Is everything all right? Did something happen at dinner? You could say that. Nathan sat down on the couch, gestured for her to sit as well. She did, tucking her feet under her, suddenly wary. He took a breath, ordered his thoughts. The key here was clarity. No emotion, no ambiguity. Just facts and consequences. Over the past 6 weeks, he began, you've publicly shared intimate details about me 4 times. The first was the spider story at Professor Martinez's dinner party. The second was the GPS incident at the brewery. The third was the bookshelf assembly at Andrew's birthday brunch. And tonight, you made a joke about my bedroom performance in front of my business partner and colleagues. Claire's eyes widened. Nathan, those were just... He held up a hand. Please let me finish. She closed her mouth. Each time, he continued, you used a private moment as public entertainment. Each time, the joke positioned me as the object of ridicule. And each time, you did it in front of people whose respect matters to me. My friends, my colleagues, my business partner. They were just jokes, Claire said, her voice rising slightly. Everyone tells stories about their partners. It's normal. It's affectionate. Is it? Nathan kept his tone even, because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've established a pattern of diminishing me for social capital. You get laughs, you get attention, and I get to smile and pretend I don't mind being made the fool. That's not. You're being oversensitive. She was defensive now, leaning forward. You laughed. You laughed every time. Of course I did. What else was I supposed to do? Make a scene? Embarrass you in front of everyone? He shook his head. I chose to be gracious in the moment. But grace isn't the same as consent, Claire. I never consented to being your comic material. She stared at him, something calculating entering her expression. So, what? You've been keeping a list? Tallying up every time I told a story? That's... She searched for the word. That's manipulative, Nathan. Here it was. The pivot. He'd expected this. When confronted with a pattern, people often tried to reframe the conversation, to make the person identifying the problem into the problem itself. I'm not manipulating anything, he said calmly. I'm describing behavior I observed and explaining why it's not acceptable to me. Those are two different things. You're acting like I committed some crime. They were harmless stories. The spider story? Sure, harmless. The GPS thing? I could live with it. But you escalated, Claire. Each story was more intimate, more revealing. Tonight, you made a sexual joke about me in front of my business partner. Do you understand how that affects my professional credibility? Oh, come on. Andrew knows you're competent. One joke isn't going to. It's not about whether it will or won't affect my reputation, Nathan interrupted. It's about respect. You took something private and used it for entertainment without my permission. You've done it repeatedly. And when I try to explain why that's a problem, you're telling me I'm oversensitive. Claire's jaw tightened. So what do you want? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. I don't want an apology. She blinked. Then what do you want? Nathan met her eyes. I want you to understand why this is ending. The silence that followed was absolute. He could see her processing, try to determine if he was serious, if this was a negotiation or a statement of fact. Ending, she repeated carefully. You mean the conversation. I mean the relationship. Another silence. Claire's expression cycled through several emotions. Disbelief, anger, something that looked like panic. You're breaking up with me because I told a few jokes? I'm ending this because you've repeatedly dishonored me in front of people I respect. And when confronted with it, your response is to minimize and deflect rather than take responsibility. He kept his voice level, factual. That tells me everything I need to know about how you see me and this relationship. Nathan, this is insane. You're throwing away 18 months over a couple of stories. For stories, he corrected. And I'm not throwing anything away. I'm making a choice based on observed behavior and rational analysis. You've shown me that my dignity is less important to you than getting a laugh. I believe you. I'm acting accordingly. She stood up abruptly, started pacing. You can't be serious. We're good together. You know we are. This is just, you're overreacting. There was again, the reframe, the attempt to make his boundary into an overreaction. I'm not overreacting, Nathan said quietly. I'm reacting proportionally to a pattern of disrespect. If you told these stories about me to make me laugh, that would be one thing. But you tell them at me to entertain others. There's a difference. Claire stopped pacing, turned to face him. Her expression had shifted to something harder. You want to know the truth? The truth is you're too serious sometimes, Nathan. You're brilliant and successful, and everyone respects you. But sometimes you need to be taken down a peg. It's good for you. He absorbed this, the mask finally dropping. So the jokes weren't thoughtless. They were corrective. You were trying to humble me. I was trying to keep things balanced. You're not perfect, you know. I never claimed to be perfect, Nathan said. But I do expect to be treated with basic respect by my partner. The fact that you saw disrespecting me as a service as something good for me. Pretty much proves my point. She crossed her arms. So that's it? You're just done? No discussion, no chance to work on this. What will we be working toward? Nathan asked. You've made it clear that you don't see this as a problem. You think I need to be taken down a peg. Those aren't compatible with me wanting a partner who has my back in public and in private. Everyone shares stories about their relationships. Nathan, this is normal. Sharing stories with your partner is normal, he said. Sharing stories about your partner as entertainment, without their consent, using increasingly intimate details, that's different. And the fact that you can't or won't see that difference is exactly why this conversation is happening. Claire's face flushed. You know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe we're not compatible. Because I need someone who doesn't keep score like some kind of robot. Someone who can take a joke without turning it into a federal case. That's fair, Nathan said evenly. You should be with someone who's comfortable being your material. I'm not that person. She grabbed her purse from the table, shoved her feet back into her heels. This is ridiculous. You're going to regret this. Maybe, Nathan acknowledged. But I doubt it. She stared at him for a long moment, and he could see her trying different angles in her mind, testing which approach might work. The tears, maybe? The plea? The anger? In the end, she went with anger. You're making a mistake, she said coldly. And when you realize it, don't come crawling back. I won't, Nathan said simply. She walked to the door, paused with her hand on the knob. For what it's worth, I did care about you. I believe you, Nathan said. But caring isn't the same as respect. I need both. She left without another word. The door clicked shut behind her with a quiet finality. Nathan sat in the silence of his apartment, waiting to feel something. Regret, sadness, doubt. Instead, he felt only a calm sense of resolution. The pattern had been identified. The problem had been addressed. The outcome was logical. His phone buzzed. A text from Claire. Can we please talk about this like adults? He considered not responding, then decided clarity was better. We just did. I said what I needed to say. I wish you well. Another buzz. You're really going to throw away everything over your ego? He set the phone down without responding. This was the part where she tried different tactics, bargaining, guilt-tripping, maybe even gaslighting, telling him he'd misunderstood, that he was being too sensitive, that she'd only been joking and he was the one with the problem. None of it would work. Not because he was heartless, but because he'd made his decision based on observable data, and the data hadn't changed. Over the next few days, the texts continued. They followed a predictable progression. Day 1, anger and accusations. You're being controlling. You're punishing me for being myself. Day 2, bargaining. Can we at least meet for coffee? I think we should talk this through properly. Day 3, guilt. I can't believe you're doing this. I thought we were building something together. Day 4, gaslighting. You're remembering things wrong. That's not what happened at dinner. Nathan didn't respond to any of them. There was nothing left to say. Every additional message only confirmed that Claire still didn't grasp or refused to accept the fundamental issue. She saw his boundary as an attack, his decision as a punishment. That was precisely the problem. The following weekend, Nathan met Andrew for coffee at their usual spot, a small cafe in the Northwest District that served excellent pour-overs and had reliable Wi-Fi. Andrew had texted asking if they could talk, which meant he'd heard from Claire. So, Andrew said, once they'd settled into a corner table with their drinks. Michelle heard from Claire. I figured. She's pretty upset. I imagined so. Andrew studied him. You doing okay? Honestly? Yeah. Nathan took a sip of his coffee. Better than okay. You want to talk about what happened? Nathan considered. Andrew was his business partner, but more than that, he was a friend. Someone whose judgment Nathan trusted. Did Claire tell Michelle her version? She said you broke up with her because she made a joke at dinner. Said you've been keeping track of every little thing she did wrong and then ambushed her with it. Nathan nodded slowly. That's one interpretation. What's yours? She established a pattern of using intimate details about me as public entertainment. When I confronted her about it, she minimized it, told me I was being oversensitive, and then admitted she'd been doing it deliberately to take me down a peg. I ended the relationship because someone who thinks I need to be publicly diminished isn't someone I want as a partner. Andrew absorbed this. The stamina joke at dinner. That was number 4. Andrew leaned back in his chair. So not an isolated incident. Not even close. And when you talked to her about it, she tried to reframe my boundary as an overreaction. Textbook deflection. Andrew was quiet for a moment. You know, Michelle mentioned that Claire had told a story about you at their book club last month. Something about you being afraid of the dark. Nathan felt something click into place. I didn't know about that one. Michelle thought it was weird at the time because, well, she knows you. You're not exactly the jump at shadows type. She wondered if Claire was exaggerating for effect. Probably, Nathan said, or inventing entirely. I've never told her I'm afraid of the dark because I'm not. Andrew shook his head. Man, that's not great. No, it's not. For what it's worth, I think you made the right call. Michelle does too. A partner should build you up, not tear you down for laughs. Nathan felt some of the tension he'd been carrying release. He hadn't needed Andrew's validation. He'd been confident in his decision, but it was good to hear nonetheless. Thanks. I appreciate that. Claire called you controlling, by the way, in case you were wondering. Of course she did. Nathan allowed himself a small smile. I set a boundary. People who benefit from you not having boundaries tend to view that as controlling. That's some therapy speak wisdom right there. I've been reading. They talk for a while longer about work, about Andrew's hiking trip plans, about a new feature they were developing for the app. Normal things, comfortable things. As they were getting ready to leave, Andrew paused. Can I ask you something? Sure. Did you love her? Claire, I mean. Nathan considered the question. I cared about her. I enjoyed her company. I could have loved her, maybe, if things had developed differently. But love without respect is just obligation wearing a costume. I don't want that. Andrew nodded. Fair enough. Walking home, Nathan thought about that question. Had he loved Claire? The honest answer was that he'd been falling toward it. That pleasant tumble into attachment and affection and possibility. But he'd never quite arrived. Maybe, on some level, he'd always been observing more than experiencing. Watching the patterns, noting the data points, waiting to see what picture would emerge. The problem with being observant, he thought again, is that you see the ending coming long before it arrives. But the advantage is that when it does arrive, you're ready. 3 weeks later, Nathan was having dinner with a different group of friends, a monthly tradition with his grad school crew. They'd gathered at someone's apartment, a potluck situation where everyone brought something. Nathan had made his signature pasta carbonara, which had been received with enthusiasm. The conversation was relaxed, wandering from topic to topic. Someone brought up dating, the perils of apps and blind dates. Rachel, a software engineer at a gaming company, groaned about a recent experience. He seemed great on paper, she said. Good job, shared interests, funny messages. Then on the actual date, he spent an hour telling me about his ex-girlfriend. Like detailed stories. I was basically a therapist with breadsticks. Everyone laughed, commiserated. Someone else shared a similar story. Then Kevin, a marketing director and one of Nathan's closest friends from their master's program, turned to him. What about you, Nathan? You're single now, right? How's that going? It's going fine, Nathan said. Taking some time, focusing on work. What happened with Claire? Rachel asked. You guys seemed solid. Nathan kept his expression neutral. We had different values around respect and privacy. It wasn't going to work long term. That's very diplomatic, Kevin said, grinning. Come on, what really happened? Did she cheat? Did you find out she was secretly a cat person? Here it was. The invitation to tell a story, to share details, to turn his failed relationship into entertainment. Nathan smiled. Just wasn't compatible. These things happen. Oh, come on, Rachel pressed. Give us something. We're all friends here. We are, Nathan agreed. Which is exactly why I'm not going to air out private details about someone I dated. She deserves better than that, even if things didn't work out. There was a moment of surprise, then nods of understanding around the table. That's actually really mature, Rachel said. Or really boring, Kevin joked, but there was approval in his eyes. Fine, keep your secrets. More pasta for us. The conversation moved on. Nathan served himself a second helping of the salad someone had brought and felt that same calm resolution he'd experienced the night he'd ended things with Claire. This was the difference. This was the line. You could share your own stories, your own embarrassments, your own vulnerabilities. That was fair game. But weaponizing someone else's private moments for social capital, making yourself the star by making your partner the punchline, that was something else entirely. Later, as he was helping clean up, Rachel approached him. Hey, I just wanted to say, what you said earlier about not sharing details, that was really respectful. A lot of guys wouldn't have that restraint. It's not about restraint, Nathan said, loading plates into the dishwasher. It's about recognizing that just because a relationship ends doesn't mean you get to violate someone's privacy. She trusted me with those details when we were together. That trust doesn't evaporate just because we broke up. Rachel nodded thoughtfully. I wish more people understood that. Yeah, well, Nathan closed the dishwasher, straightened up. It's basic decency. The bar is low these days. Driving home that night, Nathan felt something shift. Not regret, not sadness, but a kind of quiet confidence. He'd made the right call with Claire. Not just in ending things, but in how he'd handled it. No drama, no public accusations, no revenge stories to share with friends. Just a clean break, a clear boundary, and the self-respect to walk away when that boundary was crossed. His phone sat silent in his cup holder. No text from Claire. Those had stopped after week 2. No guilt, no second-guessing. Just the hum of tires on pavement and the distant lights of Portland spreading out below him. The problem with being observant, Nathan thought one final time, is that you see the ending coming long before it arrives. But the gift is that when you do, you can meet it with grace, clarity, and your dignity intact. That, he decided, was worth celebrating.
Thanks for listening.